You mentioned Kevin pointed that out. He did the interview with Chris Haynes from Yahoo Sports after that game. Were you surprised by the timing of that at all?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, right? Like, I guess, the West Coast can be a hotbed, right, for just all different types of media entities, right? So maybe they were just waiting for Kevin to come on that West Coast trip, and they were just lurking. I wasn't there. I could just imagine all those reporters lurking in one of those little corridors, waiting for Kevin to come by. But I mean, look at it. If you see where Ben Simmons, and this has been the problem, and maybe we won't call it a problem, we'll call it an issue, right? Issue is maybe a little bit lighter than problem. The issue of Ben Simmons is that, yes, he needs time to get right, and everybody understands that. But this team doesn't really have time, right? These guys have to get firing on all cylinders. And you think about it, they have to adjust to every time Ben Simmons takes a step in his rehab. Every time he's capable of doing a little bit more, now you're tasking him with more responsibility. Now these guys have to adjust to now playing with a new version of Ben Simmons. There's a new version of Ben Simmons, it feels like, every week or two. So you have to time that properly. You don't have Kyrie, and there's reports now saying that he might come back on Sunday. I think that'll lift this team. But that little 5-game stretch of defense we saw, I think that was okay, but that's not sustainable, not with the pieces that you have. And we saw that with what the Kings did, right? We saw that with how the Lakers, the Lakers have been getting dogged by everybody, and they come out and get a win against the Nets. If some of it boils down to personnel. That's why I don't think Sean Marks is done with this season in terms of making moves. And some of it just comes down to getting their guys healthy, right? I think once you get guys healthy and you get Kyrie back in the rotation, I think things fall in place.
So was that a frustrated Kevin Durant? Was that just an overly honest Kevin Durant? Because he referenced, this is why I asked for the trade this summer. He mentioned that he's having fun. He's like, I wish you guys would mic me up more. There was that to kind of soften the blow on that. But this is a pretty frank assessment of this team from him at a moment where they were particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, something he said is, do I need to have more fluff pieces written about myself? And then what do we see today? A bunch of fluff pieces written on Kevin Durant, the strength of the man. I guess frustrated is probably a word to go with, because, this is, what I'm saying, he's only getting older, right? As much as he says he doesn't really care about legacy, he doesn't care about winning more championships, guys of his caliber want rings, right? Guys of his caliber don't want wasted seasons. The Nets have had 2 wasted seasons. The third one, Kevin Durant wasn't even playing, right? So now you're in year 4 of this whole situation. Of course he's a little frustrated. Of course he's frustrated that you have a coaching change this early into the season, that guys aren't healthy, that guys aren't on the same page. But what can he do about it besides talk to guys like Chris Haynes, or maybe he pulls me aside and maybe I get to write the fluff piece next time. Who knows? I don't know.
There we go. We'll root for that one selfishly, since we're a decidedly Kristian Winfield podcast out here.
Love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. All over that one. Let's talk about the Ben Simmons portion of it, because you mentioned It's kind of an adjustment to where he's at in the rehab process, but you have some of the reports about a frustration inside that locker room with how that's coming along here. How much do you buy of that this maybe is part of the larger story about Ben Simmons over the last couple of years, where this is a guy that's just still not in the place confidence-wise as a basketball player to do the things this team needs him to do?
That's a tough question. I can't really speak to the Ben Simmons that got here before Brooklyn, right? Like, I know what I saw on TV, and I know, there's been opportunities where he just didn't attack the basket, and we've seen some of that here in Brooklyn. But I think the most important thing for him here is, like, I'm seeing him, at least in the Sacramento game, he made a concerted effort to push that ball in transition and get to the rim. He had 11 points. And I know we're talking about Ben Simmons, right? And 11 points might not sound like a lot, but for Simmons, who had never really had a double-digit scoring game in a Nets jersey, and then come out, and I'm talking about he's playing with a burst of energy. This is the second game in a row we've seen him play with, like, speed, real actual speed that you would think he should be showing. I think part of it is he's coming off with, back surgery in the offseason. He just had fluid drained in his knee a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm sure you could relate a little bit to that more than I can. Like, taking care of your body as a pro athlete, not easy. At the same time, you've got a guy like Kevin Durant who's saying, hey, if you're on the floor, you're ready to play. So there's a fine line to walk there of pushing a guy to give you more than 100% while also managing his injury. And that's tough for Ben Simmons, but that's the hand he's dealt, right? He's here in Brooklyn. They need him to produce now. So there's going to be those moments until he can actually play like the Ben Simmons that we've seen in the past, where these guys are going to be upset because he's not giving them what they need. At the end of the day, you have Kevin Durant, you have Kyrie Irving. If you don't have Ben Simmons contributing to this roster in an impactful way, I don't know how far the Nets can go.
You mentioned the Kyrie Irving portion of this conversation.
Sure.
Reportedly could be back on Sunday, and hearing a lot of stuff about how he's also reportedly kind of made this process his own. A lot of people, disagreeing about terms being dictated to him and the optics of how this looked. From everything that you've heard in and around this, does this seem like a situation that it's going to be once he comes back, hey, we've put this in the past? Has Kyrie really embraced that? Like, what have you heard, if anything, on this front?
I do think he's going to have to address the media at least one more time and actually speak on some of it. Because the last time he spoke to reporters, I mean, it was out of control. You had him saying, and just the questions were coming left and right. And I'm not sure if he was anticipating the line of questioning that reporters had for him that day. Like, he just was standing his ground. And then, as Josiah pointed out, he didn't actually apologize until after the Nets handed down the suspension. I think we're going to see Kyrie address the matter one more time. Just hey, this is what I've come to learn. I think we're going to see him give a verbal apology instead of something that he posted on social media. And then I think after that, it's going to have to be something that we leave in the past, because these guys, I mean, you look at their record. This is my team that's 6-9 at this point, barely. They want to focus on getting wins on the basketball court. If Kyrie keeps dragging this thing out and doesn't say what he needs to say to move on, they're never going to move on from this. So I'm expecting Kyrie, once he plays or once he gets reinstituted to the team, he's going to come out, make a statement, and he's going to have to say all the right things. Otherwise, we're going to be back at square one again.
Like, I was going to say, if that doesn't happen, like, we've heard people talk about them blowing this up, moving this on. Have you gotten any indication that the Nets are even close to that line of thinking in their process about this team?
Well, one thing you can point to is Jacques Vaughn getting an extra year on his contract, right? So Jacques Vaughn is filling in this season for Steve Nash, and then he has one more year on his contract after that. When I see that, I'm thinking, okay, well, Jacques the guy who's going to work with this group, and if this team decides to go in a different direction, it'll be after that. This is me just speculating, just based on the deal that we've seen. I'm not sure. I don't think that they can, at this point, maybe even afford to blow it up the way people would like them to do. I think maybe more what you see is little micro moves, right? Like, do you see them engage with Indiana and try to get Miles Turner or Buddy Hield, or maybe both, right? Do you see them engage with some of the overperforming teams? Utah. I'm sure Utah doesn't want to be one of the best teams in the Western Conference right now when they could be tanking for Victor Wembanyama, right? Like, at a certain point, some of these teams are going to start parceling off some of their better players so they can tank. I think the Nets are more likely to be active in that phase than actually trying to trade Kyrie and trade KD. Who knows? Maybe if Ben Simmons doesn't take a step forward, we might see his name start being floated in trade rumors as well.